Probably because they knew my grandpa was going to shoot my dad, which he did. And this is when I went to kindergarten and first grade. I went to a school in Park Rose, which wasn't far away from where I grew up. And in that school, I'm not really sure how well I did. One of the biggest things I remember from that time in this school was this a circle or a wheel, I guess, a wheel on a table spinning, and they're like, try to draw a straight line. It's impossible. And I just was like, no way, nothing's impossible. There has to be a way. You hit that. Of course, I didn't get enough time to play with it to try to actually, prove my point. But, I probably was wrong. But I remember that distinctly. That's kindergarten or first grade. It's kind of hard to distinguish between that time. I just know those 2 grades. I was in that school. And that happened. My mother came to school one day and baked bread, or taught the class how to make bread. That was it. I had some kind of weird experience with a bully and a knife, where I had literally to talk to the police, I think. Some fucking bully showed me his knife or something to this effect. It was like a big kid from another school or something like this. There was a eclipse, and I swear we just looked at it. This was the 70s, so, it's a little different back then. Positive they didn't give us any fancy freaking glasses like I just bought for this last eclipse. We're going on here to now, my little brother's born when I'm like about 4 and a half. Not too long after that, my parents get a divorce. And, probably like 99% of all divorces, it was an ugly divorce. Ended up in a custody thing. Custody back then was like one parent had the custody, the other parent would like get visitations on occasions or whatever. So initially, I was with my mother. Now see, this is where in my head I'm messed up about the dates, about how my life progressed. I basically remember it by houses. I've got the house that I've talked about, the little tiny house in Northeast Portland. Then my mother gets a duplex in Oregon City by herself. And then at that same time, I think my dad was living in an apartment in Oak Grove area. First, my little brother and I were living with my mother. I spent a summer with my dad out fishing on a fishing boat, and I was the deckhand. When my dad was returning me to my grandparents' house for the custody swap, there was a fight. My grandpa pulled out a gun once, and then the argument just kept going. I mean, literally at one point, my grandma was on one of my arms, and my dad was on the other one, and they were literally freaking tug of warring me. And my dad pushed my grandfather, shoved him or something, and that's when and it was just me and at that point, it was just me, my grandpa, and my dad were outside. I don't know why the hell I was outside. My mom went inside, my grandma went inside. Probably because they knew my grandpa was going to shoot my dad, which he did. And he didn't die. So that happened. I never saw my dad in the hospital. They never took me to see him in the hospital. My grandpa literally got one night in jail. Took a plea agreement because my dad didn't press charges. My dad just wanted to sue him. So somehow my grandfather with the law just came down to where he had to get rid of, and he couldn't just give him away, which my grandfather was just like, he was one of those, you know, power gun collectors. He had, you know, cases of rifles underneath the pool table. These weren't assault rifles. These were like antique, like lever action, engraved rifles. I don't even think he owned not one military weapon. Maybe like a 9/11 or something like that. But pretty much, I mean, in that box of rifles, there may have been like some old, like World War II rifle from, you know, some, but not that comes to my memory. I just remember that he had to give away or sell or something most of it, all the guns. But he got, at some point, he got his gun rights back. And he was able to, you know, start buying guns again. But he didn't. And he did get a few guns back from that time. My grandpa didn't like my dad. I don't think he liked him at all. I think my grandfather, he was so racist that he was racist against other white people. Like, he was German, and it was like those filthy Italians. It was literally like that. Filthy, 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 filthy. You know, German, good. Although, I don't know what his, he was, I think he was a conservative. He did not fight in World War II, but he did run Liberty ships for the Merchant Marines. So he was a part of the war effort. I doubt he was a fascist. But he most definitely was a racist. He tells a story about a black guy, but he didn't call him a black guy, working on the ships that had some sort of infection, and how he had to like cut his arm open or something like that to get the infection out, how he could see a red line going on for the economy, right? But obviously, he was born in like 1914 or something like that in Connecticut, so I'm not justifying racism. I just understand where it comes from. So, you know, and it generally comes from ignorance, not knowing about the other types of people that you're racist against. So then you have my dad, which was dark hair, known, probably, I don't know if he was like known to be, you know, adopted or whatever. But, my grandpa just didn't like him from day one. Like, that, you know, this is his daughter, and you know, like they were a religious family, and this slime ball from the trailer park. I mean, I don't know, you know, I know my dad from what I know him as, and how he ended up, and you know, slime ball. As a kid, I remember him starting a lot of projects that he didn't finish, and myself being like, I want to not do that type of this stuff as an adult. Grandpa shot my dad. At that point, I was living with my mom in Oregon City. And she put me into this, for the lack of a better term, hippie commune school. Really. I mean, it was like a hippie commune school. That school definitely was a bizarre experience to have right after watching, your dad get shot by your grandpa in a fight, right? So, how I ended up in this school was my stepdad, him and my mom met in the same restaurant that my dad and my mom met at. So my stepdad goes to college and becomes a teacher. So he's a teacher at Clackamas Community College. He's a college professor. He teaches like speech, English maybe, like speech tournament type debate. And somehow this like legitimately genius girl ends up at this community college that my stepdad works at, and she's just like literally just like born with a huge IQ, or it's very important that kids get read to between the time of like 0 or even like negative a few to like up to like 3 or something. Like certain things you can only get to go in the brain in that little time. Maybe like these parents like nailed it with that stuff. Maybe she was born. So bottom line is it had nothing to do with this hippie commune school. Why this girl ended up at this community college at like 12 or something, one of those. It was because she was freaking inherently smart. And I'm making this statement based on the fact that then I went to this hippie commune school for a year, and I do not see in hindsight as an adult that can evaluate past situations how anybody could have any, it was like literally no math, 0 math, okay? Here was English class was, it's like an old church, and like the main room was covered in books, which they focus a lot on reading, so, a lot, but it's just like telling a kid to go get a book off a wall and read it. That was it. Like, no, this word is that, or this word. No, it was just get a book and read it. And be quiet, too. You had to sit in Indian style in a circle and read a book in complete silence. You couldn't ask a question like, what's this word? No. So, this school was whacked. Like, I'm literally going to spend some time talking about this school. I have nothing against hippies. Nothing against hippies. I have nothing against alternative forms of education. Education, like that is my mantra. Like just learning stuff all the time. That's what our society, that's where we need to be, right? So, that's my mindset. And this school was just freaking whacked. Let me just run down like the classes that we had there. All of the whole entire gymnasium, PE or whatever, was all running. And it was running around a bark dust track across the street from the church school thing. And the rule was you had to run in your moccasins. If you didn't own moccasins, you had to run bare feet. Yeah. So basically, poor kids were in the bare feet, and the kids who weren't poor, they had the frickin' moccasins, right? I was barefoot. That was basically like the cultural divide in the hippie commune school. What was it called? It was called Milk Creek Little School. And it literally was an old church with across the street with this bark dust path, and that was the school. But yeah, I think that's where we used to get dropped off. And then I would walk down this road. Oh yeah, this is totally it. That is Mill Creek Little School. Not the greatest camera angle because I'm not trying to be all up in these people's shit. But that's it. And then right over there was that field that I was talking about. That stupid track that we used to have a run around. So, yep, this is it right here. That was a school. That was a school that gave me some very bad memories. So, other classes, I'll just run down the class list. So that was PE. Another class was music class, weaving, cooking, meditation. I think that was pretty much the curriculum at this school. So I think I told you how reading worked. Was just like there's a circle of kids and there's books all around, and just get a book and start reading. Don't ask questions if you don't know what a fucking word is. Be quiet, read, don't bother anybody. Cooking class, which was probably, I think, my favorite class at that place. It was just basic recipes. Just, little kids in a little kitchen just cooking stuff. At some point every day, the kids were all made to walk in this like a duck walk or something like this, where you're down and you have to walk really low. And that was always right through the place where the cooking class was. I mean, it was like the smallest area that you can imagine for a kitchen, and there was a class in there about it. So one of the significances to this school was the school thought it was a good idea to have every kid make their own lunch. So I was supposed to make my lunch every day, and to say my mother wasn't that good at keeping things in the refrigerator that were good for a whatever freaking age I was at this point. So I thought my parents got it's hard to put, there's like 3 years and I thought they got a divorce when I was 5, but then all of a sudden I'm 8, because that's where the school, I don't know, anyway. So yeah, this was a school, and not only that, there was no bus to this school. This school didn't have, like a public school where you just walk to the corner and a little bus would pull up, you'd get on it and go. No. So my days were spent or started, I'll never forget this. I'd be woken up at some freaking ridiculously early time in the morning. We're talking like 4 a.m. or something, right? Which now, all the research says that kids should be sleeping until like 10. You're really setting them up for failure. You're really setting them up for failure if you're starting their school day before like 11 a.m. I might not be exactly right on the time, but starting school at 7:30 in the morning, or waking kids up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're them up. Look that up. Don't argue with me. Anyway, wake up in the morning, time to take a bath. Would get in the bathtub and go back to sleep in the bathtub. I would put my head down. I would sit Indian style in the bathtub with the water running. I'd put my head on the faucet and I'd go back to sleep. And the thing that I really remember the most about that was how all the hot water would stay in front of me, and then all the water behind me would be cold water. And I, to this day, don't know how that worked. But, yeah, so basically I'd fall asleep, and then I'd have to, like, take a bath in a cold bath because all the hot water would just be one end, yeah. Anyway, so then I'd get up, and my mother would drive me, or I'd wake up, or I'd get out of the bath, or whatever you want to call it. My mother would, and then it was time to make lunch. And I think this is why the lunch didn't get made correctly, because I was sleeping in the bathtub when I was supposed to be, like, taking a bath. And then, so then when I was supposed to be making my lunch, I was still taking a bath.